Hello, everyone, and welcome to GoT Thrones, a Game of Thrones podcast. I'm Alexandra August.
I'm Johnny Kolosinski.
And we are here to discuss the season finale of Season 7, The Dragon and the Wolf.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the title.
We're pretty sure. Yeah, we checked on it several times at this point.
Several times. I liked that IO9 did the exact same mistake that I did last episode like 15 times.
I think it's the cadence, honestly. It sounds better, The Wolf and the Dragon, as opposed to The Dragon and the Wolf.
It has I-ams.
Yeah, it's, I guess I get what they're doing, but I'm particularly sensitive to cadence. I'm always trying to make sure things rhythmically sound right, correct when I write, and so yeah, that's I was not surprised you made that mistake. I wanted to make that mistake. My mouth wanted to say The Wolf and the Dragon.
Yeah. So we discussed our top fives earlier this week, and now we're going to have the in-depth conversation. We will be going back over what we discussed just for the sake of cohesiveness in the episode. We just won't dive as deep. Exactly.
So, and we're just going to go do kind of a straight recap location-wise, since it was much easier to do that this week, since most everybody was in one of four
Everyone
places.
Was in the same place.
Yeah. We should talk about... At the outset, I have to say, it really was particularly satisfying seeing just people in the same place. There was a even if the rest of this episode had been utterly terrible, and it was not, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, oh my god, there's the Hound and Cersei, and the heroes of the Blackwater Bay are back again, and Jon is in front of Cersei, and Dany's in front of Cersei, and it's just it's exciting.
It was the reunion episode before Jon gave Dany the rose. I guess Dany gave Jon the rose.
I think they gave each other the rose.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty mutual. But
So, question before we go deep in depth, though. What did you think about... There was a lot of talk about how, oh man, yes, the season is only 7 episodes, but we're getting an hour and 20 minutes for the finale. What did you think about that? Did they make good use of the time? Would it have been better to have 8 episodes, or do you think they made good use of the extended time here?
Honestly, no. But I don't think it would have been 8. I don't know that I want an extra episode. I know that I wanted that extra scene from Winterfell that gave a little bit more context to what the Hagari has been up to this whole time. And less of the silly, less silly banter. I didn't need to see the Hound come in and kick the box to make sure the thing was still alive, especially when later when he brings it out, he's like bouncing with it in a backpack and it doesn't move until he kicks the box over. So that was kind of unnecessary to me.
That felt very episodic television of we have to remind everybody what's in this box. And that it's still alive, even though we saw it 10 minutes ago of showtime.
Well, also, too, I think maybe the reason was because they wanted to call back to I think it was season 2 when Alistair Thorne brings the hand down and it's dead.
And it's dead.
I think they wanted to point out that, it's like this, as long as, the body parts won't live far away from, I guess, the source of power or whatever, but the thing itself can travel far away from its power source. Mm-hmm. So there's no distant, or its maker or whatever. The science is dodgy on this one, but I think you guys get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but, also dragons. So we can be fine with that.
Yeah. I don't know. What did you think?
I do think that this was the strongest episode of the season.
Agreed. Dialogue-wise, for sure.
Dialogue-wise, just movement-wise. As far as keeping the plot moving, probably because they only had to deal with 4 locations.
Mm-hmm. And 2 of those locations are minimally used.
Yeah. And we discussed this a little bit earlier, but I do think that they could have moved some of these scenes earlier in the season, specifically in Winterfell, and it would have been a little less, oh, how's it going to go? Oh, my goodness. But at the same time, it would have felt a little less railroady.
Yeah, it felt a bit disjointed. It felt like they left something out. And I would have preferred, if a twist happens, a twist happens. I feel like they really were pushing for a twist. And when you push for a twist, as I feel like they kind of did in the Winterfell storyline, it feels like bad M. Night Shyamalan. It feels like
Yeah.
Signs. It feels like it feels like a movie like Signs where
I was going to go with whatever that one where the trees are taking over the world.
Oh, The Happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's even a bad title.
See, I don't know. See, that to me was kind of interesting and creepy just because it was so eerie and shot in the daytime. And I mean, it was a very eerie film, not just because it was shot in the daytime, but just because you did sort of feel this menacing presence. It was almost reminiscent of The Birds to me, where you have this like, sort of menacing evil, and there's no explanation for it. There's no conscious intent. Yeah, eventually it did become silly, but
This is Got Thrones, your M. Night Shyamalan podcast.
Yeah. So that's what it felt like. It felt like a cheap trick. So I agree with you on that. It wasn't.
I do like
terrifically, but yeah, but I agree with you. I would have preferred less of a gotcha moment and more of a complete narrative.
Mm-hmm.
More of. Yeah, I want a better
I would have
story.
liked to have seen the pieces falling. We could have had an equal gotcha moment where we saw Littlefinger losing control more.
That's
where
the
we
thing,
saw
it's like,
more. You know what? Let's move into the episode and come back to this.
Yeah. I will say though, like before we do that though, in terms of this episode being bloated, I don't know that it was. I certainly don't think it was that. I think because what I really did like about it is that it felt like an episode of old school Game of Thrones for much of it, where you have all this political strategy, but you also have this, desperate emotion and importance behind it, and you have these huge stakes, and then you have this kind of interesting double cross, and people are still just sort of left trying to pick up the pieces. And it's wonderful dialogue, and these wonderful heartbreaking scenes between characters. Like, this is vintage. This is almost season 1 Game of Thrones. The first part of this was, which really made me nostalgic.
D&D have been getting a little bit of flack this season, but this is the episode that they wrote.
Yes.
And this is the one this is again going to Winterfell, which we're going to discuss more in depth, but that the moment, even though it was very twisty, felt very much like Littlefinger pulling the knife on Ned.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to that. I don't totally agree with you on that one, but yeah, I think you're right. It's probably we should probably move in to the actual episode.
Let's actually move into King's Landing, where a lot of stuff happened.
Let's be like Unsullied and move into King's Landing.
Yeah. Bam.
Terrible
well done. I approve.
It was done. I don't know that it was well done.
I talked about how much I loved that as an opening shot.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this last week, though. The opening shots the last 2 episodes have been among my favorites.
Yeah.
The long tracking shot over the map table, opening, and then all of a sudden the transition to Beyond the Wall. That was phenomenal. And I heard a lot of people who didn't. I listened to a podcast where they didn't care for that. Like, why are we at Dragonstone and then moving to the wall? I'm like, so you can do that kind of mimicking of the credits, so we know where we are. It was beautiful. And because they had left from Dragonstone, it kind of showed you their journey a little bit.
Also because if that table isn't in every episode, it doesn't get its residuals. And that table has children to feed. The
table does have children to feed. It's not just
shadow babies
for fun. Anyway, so yeah, and plus just the Dothraki running between them. Have we seen that happen before?
No, no, because the Unsullied weren't at the loot train. God,
they weren't at the Spoils of War.
So I'm sorry. Yeah, the Unsullied weren't there. So, no, we haven't seen... I guess maybe have we seen it in Meereen?
No,
because the Dothraki were not nearly... The Dothraki that were with Dany then were the dregs of Khal Drogo's.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have an army like this.
Yeah. So, yeah, I talked about how much I love that. You talked about how much you love that. But also the Bronn Jaime... soldiers don't fight for honor, which was essentially a discussion, even though it was comedic.
Well, it was also kind of a foreshadowing to Jaime's eventual decision. You see him; he's basically the last 3 episodes since the Spoils of War. He's just, I think, been in a constant state of severe agita, given that he has seen with his own eyes that they are fighting a losing war, and he is stuck. he is handcuffed. He's handcuffed himself to Cersei at this point, and I think all he can do now, he's just an observer in the slow destruction of his house and everything that he loves.
Yes.
Or the slow implosion. And he's just, I think this is what's really been bothering me about his character this season, is that he's just been so paralyzed. And I want him to really embrace the right choice, or just embrace a choice. And he just is sort of just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And you see him once again, this look on his face as he looks at the Unsullied, and then later at the Dothraki as they come through, of just the, oh, fuck, we are so very fucked.
Yeah.
And you see it on his face, and then Bronn basically breaks down why he has nothing here to fight for. Kind of.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But... Or Bronn sort of like Bronn just echoes the pointlessness of the entire endeavor. And I feel like it was kind of like, if you've seen the Sex and the City movie, Miranda telling Mr. Big the night before his wedding that marriage is tough and he shouldn't do it. And then he leaves Carrie at the altar. Kind of. Or he stands her up.
Why is it, of all the movies that you've referenced over the 3 years we've been doing this podcast, this is the one that I get?
You were plenty good with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
That's true. And it's back.
We speak a common language. So yeah, that was, I'm a little bit over the dick jokes. Kind of like, we've had a eunuch on this show since the jump. There's been at least one eunuch that's a regular on Game of Thrones since the get. Yeah. And I'm done with the lack of dick jokes. It's been 7 long seasons, and we get several of them this episode. Like I feel like you could play a pretty decent drinking game with just the dick jokes in this episode alone.
I think you could play, like, you just set the season running for your afternoon, and you won't remember your evening.
Or you'll just die. That's hyperbolic, but yeah.
Yeah, they've been, and also the dick jokes have been a little bit more on the nose. They've been more modern.
They've been more what?
Modern.
Yeah, and
you can't make a modern eunuch joke.
And also, too, like, the dick-on jokes were kind of funny, but I'm sorry.
I will defend the dick-on jokes till the day I die.
Well, okay, I'm being totally nitpicky right now. They did bother me a little bit, because this is a name that George picked, and it's the name that George picked for a kid who is the heir to a very high house, or to a very powerful and wealthy house. There's no way in this world that Dickon is a silly name.
Agree to disagree, because...
All right, that's as much time as we're going to spend on that for the rest of my life, I promise.
So...
After that, the hound hits the box.
Yeah. Really? That's the joke you make?
That was totally unintentional.
We have the arrival of pretty much everyone in King's Landing, which is somehow surrounded by palm trees. On rewatch, I loved the amount of time they spent getting to the dragon pit.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that too, and it always made me think of, like, camp. If you go to day camp or something, and usually where the buses drop you off, you still have to, like, walk 1,000,000 miles to get to whatever field you're going to sit down in for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt a bit like that.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
So we had the wonderful reunion, of Bronn and Tyrion and Podrick.
That warmed the cockles of my heart.
It did. The fact that they all recognize that King's Landing is still there because of those 3 dudes.
Yeah. And nobody else does. Nobody fucking asks a question when Tyrion says that. Like, Brienne's like, wait, what? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. That's
pretty
impressive, y'all.
You had some interesting things to say as we were planning this episode about Brienne and her arrival with Pod.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else missed this, or it could have just been me. But Brienne and Pod are not in King's Landing at Jon's invitation. They are in King's Landing at Cersei's invitation. And it's interesting to me that it's going to become later relevant that Jon bent the knee to Sansa. Pardon me, bent the knee to Dany. I thought it was interesting that he did it without so much of it. Yeah, that he did it without so much as a buy or leave to Sansa, and to the point where, like, he didn't send her a note afterward until it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's interesting that, and that you know, coincidentally comes into play when Sansa is showing the letter that he writes later to Littlefinger. It was just or the letter that she's showing to Littlefinger, the letter that Jon later writes to her about this. It's just interesting to me that the show would choose this particular moment to maintain such an eye for detail when previously it's not been.
Yeah.
It's clearly not been a priority. And we can really just go back to, like, Gendry's run in the last episode. There's just no way that I mean, I don't know that, like, the timing doesn't so much bother me as the fact that I just don't think he would have survived.
He's been rowing for 4 seasons.
Yeah, or, like, you know, that kind of stuff. The fairly, like, I would have been willing to assume that Jon got off a raven to Sansa and sent her one if it hadn't been a plot point that he wasn't talking to her throughout the entire season. And it's weird to me that, like, at this point the details are really, really important when they're not actually that important. Like,
for me, the weird part was the fact that it also felt like Jon treated it like a separate delegation at the introduction.
Yeah, it just exactly. It was very interesting, and I think not super obvious that these are 3 different factions. Because that means that Cersei, to some extent, acknowledges the North as a separate entity,
which makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess she would understand that they wouldn't come to an audience if she was like, "Hey, vassal, that's escaped me. Come here."
Yeah,
like, she probably did have to address them as, "Okay, kingdom in the North. That's like the kingdom in the North right now. Come down and say hey."
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jon, we felt like the North. I mean, like, they've put together Jon and Dany, and then at this moment we were just reminded that, like, oh, they have no official reason to be together, and most people think they're enemies.
Right. So for me, it was more weird that instead of seeing Brienne and Jon meet up on a beach or at a pub, it's on the road.
Yeah.
That they didn't say, "Hey, you're here for me, so here's what's been going on." And Brienne might say, "Okay, well, maybe you don't be quite so forward about all this," because actually, no, Brienne would totally do the lawful good thing.
Yeah. Absolutely 100%.
Brienne would have encouraged this.
But it is, yeah, I think you know what, I think it's just Brienne that was really, it just didn't really sit right in my head. I'm like, Brienne and Jon and Sansa have been on the same team for a while, and they've been living in the same castle because, it seemed really strange to me that Jon was sort of like, Jon really seemed to be Team Dany this time, and, like, had little to nothing to do with Brienne. And
Jon was Team Dany rather than Team Jon.
Yeah, and it was odd. And why didn't Jon doesn't speak to Brienne at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, at all. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, he's not like, how's Sansa?
A heads up would have been nice.
Yeah, it's so... Sorry, that just occurred to me, because this episode was quite dense.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, what the fuck?
Jon, for all we know, doesn't know that Arya's there. Or Bran's there.
He does, remember, because he got the Raven.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay,
to go to East
you're right.
I didn't know Bran was still alive. I didn't know Arya was still alive. It was such a funny... Just, you could see his brain break. It was funny. And a very sweet heart. I'm glad that they're alive and he knows it.
One last thing on the arrival, including Brienne. We did have the awesome Brienne and the Hound moment where our little kid's grown up.
Yeah, they were like, somebody tweeted, they're like, oh my gosh, look at them co-parenting. Like, they're like exes co-parenting their weird...
At a soccer match.
Yeah, their weird, crazy daughter. And
yep.
I was like, oh, that's kind of true. I didn't need a lot between them, but it was nice to see Arya finally fucking come up between...
Yeah, and it was nice, given the way the season has gone, it was nice that they had animosity in the past, and it wasn't brought up it wasn't brought up as, okay, and now we have to take this to the next level.
Yeah, now we have to resolve this thing that neither character really gives a fuck about anymore.
Right. And they fought because they fight.
Well, yeah, they fought because of Arya, and Arya's fine now, too.
Right.
Like, that was a nice, because I like those kinds of moments rather than let's hash it out moments, because, especially between characters that I feel like probably deep down could be really good friends. Like, I feel like the Hound and Brienne in some universe could totally be besties. Like, I think they would be great workout buddies. I think she would probably, like, I don't think that they would ever date or anything, but I feel like they would be buds.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see that sort of, those underlying character traits that they do have in common. It was nice to see those acknowledged a little bit. That, so that was nice. Of the kind of filler throwaway scenes we got, I really liked that one the most.
Yeah.
And then we actually arrive at the Dragon Pit.
Right. Well, we do. Danny doesn't.
Danny doesn't. Oh my gosh, petty as fuck.
Yeah, pretty great.
It was great because Cersei did show up on time. It's probably the only time Cersei has shown up on time.
I don't know. Cersei's been late for killed the joke.
No. Yeah, that was interesting to me because it was so petty. It was such a girly petty thing to do too. Like they really.
I disagree.
Well, no, I mean, in Cersei's reaction to it was just so so effeminately snotty to me. Like it rang just, and when I say that, I mean it harkens back to like all of the Edith Wharton I've read and all of the like Jane Austen period pieces I've watched and books that I've read of just when you get these really, really women tend to fight like this really, really, really sweet passive aggression between two very commanding women, and it's just icy and it's done really sophisticatedly. Like that's a lot of sort of pre equal rights feminine literature. All the action takes place in the living room, takes place in words, because you couldn't write women fighting things out. You couldn't write, like, not that you couldn't, but there wasn't an audience for it, and there wasn't really a frame of reference for it. So all this shit plays out, and it gets really sophisticated with words and with these, like, subtle passive-aggressive actions. So that really spoke to almost, like, a Downton Abbey level of petty and icy, of wealthy, petty, bitchy women.
You just missed Lady Olenna.
I do. I was like, this was a totally Lady Olenna move, and I bet Cersei knows it. Cersei's like, that bitch told her to be late.
I'm going to disagree that Danny showing up late was a passive-aggressive moment, because it was an aggressive-aggressive moment.
I know, but just the fact that it played out between Cersei, who is so famously woman-hatey, and famously snotty, like famously elitist. That it hit a Mean Girls moment with me, but a good one. And I do, but like at the same time, completely understand, like, obviously she would show up late to make an entrance and to be like, hi, here's my strength, I'm gonna flex it.
The minute she wasn't on the minute we didn't see her riding through the jungles of King's Landing, we knew exactly what her entrance was going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also it was fun too because it clearly bothered Cersei, because I think Cersei had probably considered, maybe I'll show up late, but then she was like, no, I'll be nice this time. And then Danny shows up late. She's like, damn, the one time I wasn't petty, someone was petty to me.
There's an alternate script out there somewhere where neither Danny or Cersei show up.
Or they both show up on time and like it melts Cersei's heart.
Yeah.
And they become friends. And they tell, like, everyone to leave the Dragon Pit, and then, like, 2 hours later they come out and they've, like, braided each other's hair, what's left of it, and they're like, we worked it out. And then the rest of the show is just fighting White Walkers.
Yeah. So, Danny arrives, and we have the hints of Clegane Bowl that everyone thought, everyone on the internet, and I know you're sick of Clegane Bowl, everyone on the internet thought it was going to happen this week.
Really, they thought he was just going to wander up to his brother and take a sword and be like, yeah, I know this is really important, but this has been coming for a long time. Like, really?
Well, it's an hour, 20-minute episode. They can obviously devote 55 minutes to Clegane Bowl.
Well, they obviously... don't. Yeah, that's another thing. One other thing that I could have done without this incredibly contrived, utterly fan service waste of a conversation.
I don't think it's utterly fan service, because I think it's something that the books are building to.
I guess I just feel like if the books are going to build to it, it's not going to sound this like, "Hey, brother, I'm coming for you." Like,
yeah, it was a WWE promo.
Exactly, and I think I've said this before. I'm not upset necessarily at Clegane Bowl to begin with. I just don't want them to go out of their way to do it. I think it absolutely makes sense, and I would love it if it fits organically within the story. But I 100% do not trust that they are. if Clegane Bowl makes it onto the show, that it's not going to feel like they're devoting a fucking capsule episode to it.
Yeah.
And they're going to like go through they're going to jump through very strange hoops to get the Hound and the Mountain in the same space together. And that's where I'm like, and this conversation to me is very much evidentiary of that, because it felt really tacked on.
Yeah. I won't disagree. Mm-hmm. We also had our Euron Theon moment.
This was for fucking dumb jokes. This was good.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit how much we liked the Euron Theon Tyrion because it brought us old school Theon again.
Yeah. And it was funny. It was funny. Actually, the rhythm of it was really, I mean, sorry. Ronnie Greyjoy continues to just delight and amaze. He barely had any screen time this week, and I was like, yep, bring him back. Just encore. I
will agree with you that I have loved every moment of Ronnie. However, leading into the season, they were talking about how we would feel 10 times the hatred of Ramsay Bolton towards Ronnie. And I just want to see him on tour.
I want to have, like, dude, him and Qyburn, I would have lunch with.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
And I think we've also talked about this to death. I'm happy it's this. I'm happy they didn't try to approximate Book Euron in the time they had left. This makes more sense. I don't like the way the show is now. I don't think we need Book Ronnie. So,
but it does feel like the actor and D&D in talking about the season didn't read the scripts.
Or they were really, really worried. They were really worried people were not going to like this particular interpretation of Ronnie Greyjoy. And they were like, okay, we'll just make him seem really scary and hope for the best. That's probably not what happened, but... Not
so much.
It was, but it just, oh my god, it's made me really happy.
Like,
Peeler Asbeck is just got one thing, and he's got it in his teeth, and he's not letting it go. He's like, I am a rock star. I am having a great time, and we're just gonna
look at all this leather.
Look at all this leather. Like, he's enjoying every full minute of this, and that is its own kind of extreme villain. Like, he's a sociopath. I am frightened of him. I would not want to test him. I certainly.
But at the same time, I would totally go see his Velvet Underground cover band.
Yeah, I'm like kind of attracted to him. I would, if he like texted me at night, I'd smile. I wouldn't text him back, but I'd be like, huh. So,
yeah. From there, speaking of things that we aren't sure if they're going to live up to the expectation, we have the White in a Box.
White in a Box.
Yep.
This was. So just from here on out, we called it show and tell, or it was. So from the entry of the White on, I liked this, but there was an inherent silliness to this whole presentation because it really did feel like a boardroom presentation where John's first day or his first one, and he's like, got a laser pointer.
Yep. And for a second, the PowerPoint isn't working.
Yep, for a second it's not working, and then like his friend bangs on the TV, and then all of a sudden it's up, but the volume's really loud. They got to turn it down, and then eventually they get control of it, and things go pretty smoothly from there on out. But
yeah, and Qyburn just likes graphs. There's not a pie chart that Qyburn doesn't like.
Qyburn asked a lot of really good questions.
He did.
Really good questions. Cersei's just really hard to read, so yep. Yeah, it was. I don't know. There was just that inherent silliness to it. I don't know how else they would have done that. I obviously they rehearsed. They seemed to work like kind of.
I'm gonna say not silliness, campiness, because it was entirely earnest within the world of the show, but it was just up at 11 when it could have been a 6.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just the overarching inherent silliness of them going to get a zombie to bring down to show the Queen of Westeros. I think it's a little bit too, it almost dealt a little bit too practically with the fantastical element of the show. Mm-hmm. I think that's maybe where I was just like,
Like, we could have had another episode that was just them trying to figure out what kind of box works.
Yeah.
If this had been Better Off Ted.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to be in that. Like, those are the conversations that I like, but that don't really fit on this show. Mm-hmm. I like it when fantasy deals practically with itself.
Like Varys could have said, "Oh, I have the perfect box,"
or I know how to make a really good box that'll do just the trick. It works for a live person, so for a dead guy, it should be like just overcome.
Right. And then 7 other wildlings die that we don't know their names.
Exactly. It's like Jurassic Park. It's like the beginning of Jurassic Park. See, now that is something I would have watched. If we had seen a wildling go down to check on the white, and then all of a sudden, like, puts his hand in the box and just gets dragged into it screaming.
And now we have 2 whites in the box, and they need to figure out how they're going to do the presentation. We only have 1 chain.
They keep multiplying. It's like, oh man, the trouble with Wibbles. All right, moving on. Just moving on from that. I kept distracted.
Moving on, we have Euron peeing himself and leaving.
Stop it. Oh yeah, that's not wrong. So Euron. I actually really liked him in this moment when I thought it was real.
Yeah. I was disappointed that they walked that back.
Yeah, I was like, this could totally be the last I ever see of Euron Greyjoy, and I would have, thumbs up. No complaints. No complaints whatsoever. I don't even need
the Iron Bank has their own boats.
Yeah, this is, the Iron Bank, if Euron can build that many boats in 2 weeks, the Iron Bank surely doesn't have the same issue.
Yeah.
So he bolts. Euron is like, can they swim? And he says it with appropriate gravitas, and John's like, no, but I feel like there was a but coming at the end of that, but John didn't get a chance to get it out.
Yeah.
Like, no, but I feel like
he's water.
It's like, he's like, I feel like they're gonna get there at some point. Yeah, exactly. It's like, but water freezes. So Euron, once he finds out that they can't swim, is like, peace, I'm out. And Cersei's like, wait, what? And
Ronnie's like, this is terrifying. With this scene is the fact that they had worked it out.
But again, how the fuck would they have worked it out if they didn't know what was going to be in that box? That's kind of what I feel like that's the level of 5D chess that I don't really believe is being played, because I just don't see Cersei being prescient enough to be like, okay, whatever they come down with, whatever they have to talk to us about.
Yeah, even if it's stupid.
Yeah, find some way to leave my service so we can help them. Like, how did did Tyrion say that they wanted their help?
I guess it could have been, well, there's dragons, so you can be afraid of dragons.
Well, I mean, but the point is she wants him to leave because she wants to convince Jon.
She wants Dany to be coming at this from a point of weakness.
Yeah, basically, she wants to convince them that she would help. She wants to convince them that she would be vulnerable enough to help, because that's the only way they would believe her helping, is if she were in a position of vulnerability. And I don't know that I buy that she's that. I guess we might be able to get to this later, because I have a Cersei question I want to ask you, but I don't know. That just seemed to me like that doesn't... I don't even know that when strategizing... How did she even know that they needed her help?
Yeah.
Is that what Tyrion... Because I don't remember Tyrion selling it like that. I'm just saying that we want to talk. We want an armistice. We have something to talk about with you. I guess you would only do that if you needed someone's help in time of war, but it still doesn't totally track for me. I still think that we could have had a scene where, I don't know, she said as much. She was like, they're never going to believe me if she even said to Jaime, like, they'll never believe me if I say yes to helping them. Like, why would they believe me? Of course it's a trap. I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
But she says yes.
Oh, yeah, because then Jon and Davos and everybody finished the presentation and
turn the lights on.
And Jon's like, so, thoughts? And Jaime's like, how many? And Dany says 100,000 at least, and Jaime visibly pales, which I thought was
Jaime poops.
Gross. Jaime, like, if this was a cartoon, it would have been like a ooh.
Yep.
And which I liked. I liked seeing. Jaime's story was actually tracked really well for me, given the scenes that we've seen. Jaime is at this point at the end of his rope. He's like, there's 100,000 of that it takes. We have to try to kill it 3 different times. Like, I have to kill it 5 times to kill it once. And if I die, I become that. Okay, sold.
Yeah.
So Cersei does eventually
Cersei, who's
say
never
yes.
been in a battle, just, 100,000, that's fine. We'll get more.
It's fine. But, she's like, there are more than 100,000 people in this city alone. You're crazy, bitch, get out.
Yeah.
But Cersei doesn't do that. She says that she will help with one condition, that Jon sit this fight out, which is very dumb, that Jon sit this fight out and not pledge allegiance to either of these queens and let them fight it out on their own once hostilities begin again. And she also points out that before that, she also points out the very obvious possibility, and to her perspective and to many people's perspectives down south, including the Archmaester, this could very easily be a trap.
Right.
And is probably a trap.
Right.
Like I said, from her perspective, she lays that out. She's like, okay, so what you want me to do is to pull all of my armies back, leave my entire country open to your invasion while I wait for word that you're done fighting an ice monster upstairs.
Is that you're done fighting and it's time for us to fight again.
Yeah, like, if I were Cersei, I wouldn't agree to that. Even if I was a good person. Like, that's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I would not, like, that's just, I wouldn't believe in a million years that somebody would do that. And also, this is another thing that bothers me, because once she comes back and she says that she's going to volunteer her troops, wouldn't that have been the ask that they should have gone in with? Like, hey, we need your troops. I feel like that would be more trustworthy. It's like, all right, you fight, like, on the west side. We'll fight on the east side. We'll at least get this enemy done. And neither one of us is, like, really weakened our position. We've both weakened our positions equally. Do you know what I mean?
Here's my thoughts on that.
Okay.
I have a feeling that when they had the conversation of this meeting that we have to have, that's what Jon started with. And Tyrion just started laughing.
That's a good point. Well, okay, so this will bring us to our next... This will transition nicely. So Jon is like, ooh, right, I'm so sorry. And Dany's like, whoa, what? Dude, no. It's like, I kind of already promised allegiance to Dany. We haven't told... You're the first people who know. First people who we're telling. But we are allianced.
Yeah.
I've bent the knee. And
here's happy. My issue with all of this, above and beyond Jon being Jon, because that all made sense to me.
Yeah.
Dany could have corrected this and said, actually, I'm okay with this idea. You're now unbent.
Unbowed, unbent, and unbroken. Aren't there? Yeah. I feel like I've heard house words like that. Aren't there? Yes.
Okay. Oh, not anymore.
Oh, that's right.
But if you want them, they're yours.
Oh man. So yeah, it was. Again, this was just sort of it played for cheap laughs. I thought. I'm not as upset that Dany didn't stand up and say, a moment, please.
Yeah.
Because it was really, honestly, it kind of did it for me that she was like, oh my god, dude, like, that just happened, like, last night, okay? I didn't realize we were telling people. Let's slow our roll a little bit. I think you're great, but, I mean...
It's complicated.
Yeah, this just happened. Let's just let it be what it is for a little while, okay? We don't need to rush. So, Tyrion is seriously displeased because he wasn't told about this. And Dany probably would have told him, but it probably wasn't... Actually, no, that really does suck. She should have told him immediately.
Yeah.
So, which we'll get into later when we discuss why Tyrion was looking displeased outside their door, outside the boat sex door. But, so...
the boat sex door, by the way, is the name of our next album.
Sequel to the Hodor.
Yeah.
Follow up to the Hodor, pardon me. So, Jon Inisi's already bent the knee to Dany. Cersei's like, well, that's fucking great. See ya. And Tyrion's like, no! And what follows was one of my favorite just bits in the whole series, and not the series, of the season, and definitely this episode, was Tyrion just abject that Jon couldn't lie this one goddamn time.
Yeah.
Like, you fucking Starks. I get it. I love you guys. I seriously do. But you can just hear the frustration. He's like, could you please maybe lie some of the time? Just once in a while. Could you just not completely fuck us?
Or just keep your mouth closed and I will lie for you.
I will do it. I will take that burden for you. And even Danny is like, dude, that's so sweet. Timing is just give me, I need a minute. All right. You're very sweet, but oh my God. And John's just like, I feel like we could probably bring back Jon Snow voice right now because I think it's appropriate.
Oh yeah. I can't remember. Well, I bet the knee.
I messed up, guys. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It's really, man, like this was Charlie Brown.
I thought it was a good thing.
I thought it was a good thing.
People should know. Hair blowing in the breeze.
Just imagining him like kicking up dust around the dragon pit.
Here's the thing, and I just thought about this right now. He elbowed Davos in the stomach saying, shut up about the I was dead. He gets the need.
I know.
He understands the we don't talk about this right now because there's a queen in the room.
Because it's hella awkward.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was just.
Jon Snow.
It was. I mean, it really was really funny that he's like he has done all of these amazing, amazing things, but we've really only seen him in one capacity, and it's not political. No. So it was really funny to see him just kind of eat it like this real quick, and then he does have a very nice speech where he's like, "Listen, a speech that resonated with me certainly." Where he talks about how
that supposedly was left in because of current political context.
Yeah, hence it resonated with me. Oh, you mean it was left in on purpose because of that? Oh, I need to watch these after shows. But
I don't think that came in the after show. I think it came in an interview or something like that.
Ah, okay. So yeah, where a speech where he says, "Listen, I get it. I know that it's not always convenient to tell the truth, but the thing is, like, when people stop telling the truth, like, you have to always do it, or else it's not worth it ever." And he uses fairly slippery slope logic to explain the fact that once one person starts lying, and once it's okay to do it a little bit, eventually, like, we get this sort of political situation where you need to play a Game of Thrones just to figure out who sits next.
Yeah,
and I think that was sort of a reaction. It really highlighted one of the overarching conflicts of this series, which is, you know, people like the Starks who are not supremely sophisticated in many ways, but are very practical and believe wholeheartedly in things like integrity and honor and honesty, because those are really the only securities you have in a world like this, where you don't have an organized law. You don't really have organized law enforcement. You don't really have a justice system that is dependable. And then you have somebody hearing this like somebody hearing this like Tyrion Lannister, who's sort of the best of the other side of it, which is that, listen, if you're clever, you can save yourself from a lot of situations that are perpetuated by people who would look down on you for certain reasons. And like Tyrion was not treated terrifically well by Northerners. Ned gave Jaime a bad rap. So there's limitations to how well one can function from that sort of like Northern simplistic sort of salt of the earth perspective versus somebody who's more sophisticated and more strategic. Like, I think you have need of both, and it was neat to see those two mentalities meet in an impasse this scene.
Yeah.
Where Tyrion's like, it clearly, like, dude, we have a very practical problem. How for one, it's like the one time Jon hasn't thought practically first this entire time. He's like,
yeah, we have a very practical problem. How will we address it? Ideals.
And honor. I'm going to talk about honor. To Cersei? I think that was it too. It's like sort of Tyrion was like, are you fucking know your audience, dude? And but then also one of my favorite moments of the episode where Tyrion's like, well, that's all well and good, but we're fucked, and now I have to go talk to my sister alone. And Dany's like, I didn't come here for her for you to die. Yeah. And that's 100% what will happen. Like, it was really cute how she was like, whoa, no, you're not doing that. No.
Right.
And then also for Jon to volunteer, and Jon's like, oh, I should go, I did it. It's like, she will definitely murder you. Like, there's not even a chance. Jon has faced a literal ice god, and Cersei Lannister, he's like, yeah, you're right, I'll sit this one out.
Yeah. Cersei will literally murder you, Jon. Been there. It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, Jon has literally died before, though, and is like, yeah, I've only got the one life left. I'm we'll let you handle it.
Yeah.
And then, but before that, though, we missed Jamie and Brienne meeting for the first time. Again, for the first time in a minute. What did you think about this? I always think about this in terms of, like, close the door podcast and whether or not they would feel satisfied by it. But what did you think?
I liked it. And this is going to, I probably wouldn't have liked it if it had ended up this way. But I would have been even more satisfied from a pure shipping standpoint if Jamie had actively shown up. Like, we'd seen him ride beside Brienne out.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. That would have been a little hokey.
It would have been super heavy-handed, and I would have actually hated it. But overall, I liked it, and I think it played well into his final scene with Cersei.
Yeah, I would. Again, I think Jamie's arc played out very smoothly and neatly in a good way this episode, and this was definitely part of it. It felt a little, I don't know, it felt in its own way a bit fan servicey. Then again, I don't know what else they would have done with them. I think it's completely appropriate that she would have been like, hey, can you fucking smarten up a little bit? This is like, what are you doing dillying around here? This isn't you. Or at least she thought that she could reach that part of him, which I really liked. But I feel like I don't want Jamie and Brienne to simply be a function or an accessory to Cersei and Jamie. I'd like them to have their own journey and relationship and not have that relationship be to service the other's character development. And I feel like that's what we've gotten since they took their journey together. And since she's, firmly ensconced herself in the north with Sansa's dolt brothers, which really amused me. I also didn't know. I was like, what? Wait, hey, where do you get off? These people just did you a favor. And you killed one of those dolt brothers almost.
Yeah. You did your best.
Yeah, that's also another thing that's going to be hella awkward if and when Jamie winds up at Winterfell, which I'm going to cautiously assume that he will.
Yeah.
Or at least in the same room as Bran and Sansa.
Yeah. So will Robo-Bran give a crap?
Oh, now I really want to see that, because I feel like no.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of other people will.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, do you think that's going to be, that's going to be a final, like, Game of Thrones fuck you to Jamie, that we're going to see him go through this big redemption arc only for Arya or somebody to kill him?
I don't think so. I mean,
crossed.
Bran's the only one who knows.
Yeah, but once Bran says something, I would imagine that's going
once
to
Bran
Sansa.
Says he looked so beautiful when he was banging his sister.
I'm like, I think if anybody finds out, I think if Bran, who doesn't really have the filter necessarily that he probably will need coming up, Bran is
Jon forgave Theon.
Yeah, but this is way more immediate and in front of him. And this is way more, and what Theon did is more forgivable, I think, than what Jamie laid hands on a child and tried to murder them. Theon 100% did the same thing, but just
to pretend they were other children.
Yeah. I guess that's foggy too. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. I think that it would be harder for Jon to stay his hand with Bran in the room and having so much and having watched that happen, because he didn't watch what happened to Theon. And I think that it's, as much as we like to blame Theon, hey, just listen to earlier episodes of this podcast, as much as we like to blame Theon for Robb's death, I don't think Robb was going to win that war. And I don't think that he would have, I don't think he would have survived his own people. To win the war long enough, even with the help of the Greyjoys. And the Greyjoys wouldn't have ever helped anyway. Kat was right. She's like, never trust a Greyjoy.
Yeah.
So it's that's come full circle.
So we've discussed Cersei and Tyrion.
Yeah, we did that at length. I think I've rewatched it a couple of times, and I don't know that I'm picking up on anything new. I still think she's. Not pregnant, or it's not Jamie's. Actually, I should probably mention, maybe this is what we talk about. I think I'm reversing my position on something I've been pretty stubbornly attached to for the last couple of weeks.
I'm all ears.
Well, okay, so, and this is I still think that there's a really good chance that this baby is not real. I think that a lot of what Cersei did in this conversation with Tyrion, not drinking the wine, putting her hand on her belly, making it very clear that she's worried about not just herself, but something inward. I think she was putting on a show for her brother because she knows he's got a heart and she knows how to manipulate him. She just was so angry at him, she couldn't really be fucked to do it for a long time. So I think that was definitely a show for Tyrion. And she could still be pregnant, though. And again, I still doubt it. But the fact that she conspired with Euron, apparently, which was not something I expected or really was taking into consideration, because on Game of Thrones, we'll get a clue that a small clue that someone's conspiring, not just a got ya moment at the end of this. I didn't consider that to be the case, but it makes sense that she and Euron have been conspiring and sleeping together this entire time, and that's just as much of a betrayal of Jaime than faking a pregnancy would be. So I think it could be Euron's baby, but I still think it could be fake. But I think that that's the only other option to me, is that it's Euron's child. Because honestly, if you think about it, he's kind of like the Kettle Blacks. That's almost like his characterization a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Like these really rough and tumble, I'll pretend to respect your agency for a while, but, at some point I'm going to get tired of playing these games, and I do expect to have sex with you, Queen Cersei, kind of that kind of attitude.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah.
I'm still on the it's real and it's Jaime's boat, but ultimately it's going to come down to Maury Povich.
It's true. You better start working on that time and space machine.
Yep.
And then we're back after Tyrion and Cersei. We have a bit of time where apparently they're just sort of kvetching, and we're looking at time lapsing in the dragon pit while they're having their conversation.
Yeah.
And Jon is still kicking dust around the dragon pit.
Yeah, we have a really interesting, now that Dany's calmed down a little bit, moment with Jon and Dany, where Dany talks about, well, this was kind of this building, this Colosseum, whatever, was the downfall of my family in a way, because dragons shouldn't be caged. And we have Jon holding a little tiny dragon skull.
Mm-hmm. A jaw. It was a...
Yeah, tiny dragon jaw. And well, they had to be caged because we saw in Meereen what happens when they aren't. And
I thought it was...
die.
Yeah, when Missandei asked about that, it's a conversation with Jorah initially, and Jorah sagely says, he gets the sage Jorah voice going, and he says, dragons don't understand what's theirs and what isn't. I'm like, well, yeah, because they're animals. Like, a cow doesn't understand what's its and what isn't. It knows what it likes to eat.
Cows don't eat people.
Yeah, well, they don't. Good. Well, yeah, but I mean, it was just, I don't know, it was like dragons had this sort of, like, just really dominant personalities or something. Like, it was like he was explaining, like, somebody with that, I don't know, it was almost like he was explaining, and I know this is not Asperger's, but it was like he was explaining somebody who was on the spectrum. Like, that was the language and the tone he was using. I fully do not think, I'm not trying to conflate people with Asperger's or autism with dragons. It was just, he was talking about it like it was a person who just had, like, personality
who just had boundary issues.
Yeah, with boundary issues and, like, social awkwardness or something. I'm like, no, they're just fucking monsters. Like, they're just the apex predator. Like, that's why.
Yeah. Dragons don't understand what's theirs and what isn't because everything is theirs.
Yeah, it's theirs. Like, they have, yeah, I don't know. So that was...
Dragons don't understand what's theirs and what's not theirs yet.
Yeah. Cool. We're working on it, though. We have big plans. It amused me that I'm like, how big were this was just from a practical standpoint. I'm like, but how big were the dragons that were causing trouble that served as the motivation to build the dragon pit? Because Drogon was as big as the dragon pit. Yeah. So I want to know what raptor-sized dragons were running around King's Landing, like, stealing children and starting small fires.
Like they did. Yeah, da 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 yeah, da da da.
Ah. Drogon.
Good girl, clever girl. So after about 100 years or so, we figured we should find a place to put them.
Yeah, no.
After about 40 years, we had it built.
Yeah. After about 40 years, they stopped knocking it over. Oh, another quick dragon joke. I really enjoyed when Drogon flapped his wings and all the dust came up because I knew in my heart it was making Cersei angry. I knew in my heart. Oh, also, we didn't talk about this, but this was I'm surprised nobody's brought up the Woods Witch prophecy given that long sequence of Dany getting off the dragon and slowly approaching Cersei where it's just her and Lena Headey's head in the frame.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the queen that's coming to take Cersei down. It was never Marjorie.
Oh. Duh.
I thought the momentousness of that moment, of that shot, was
the younger, more beautiful queen
coming over and just walking right up. Anyway, sorry. But
maybe it's Lyanna.
Perhaps that I would believe. Wouldn't that be great? Oh, now I want them to share a scene.
Oh, I meant Stark, not Mormont, but yeah, I'll take it.
Oh my gosh, this could have legit already been fulfilled.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Enough with the Valonqar prophecy.
For this week.
Right.
Yeah, so we also had the conversation between Jon and Dany where Dany blurts out that she can't have kids.
Yeah, because she says it's the end of her family, and Jon's like, well, you're still here. What the?
Yeah.
I know how this works. And Dany's like, oh, no. See, what had happened was
I killed the lady's family.
Not me specifically.
But my buddies.
My husband.
Yeah. And so she said I can't have kids anymore, and then I lit her on fire and she died.
But and then that's how the dragons were born.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was okay. So this is where Dany says to Jon, she can't have children, and Jon's like, why not? Wink, wink. And Jon says, who told you that? Which is to me such a weird answer. Like, why would you? If somebody said they couldn't have children, would your first answer be would your first question be who told you that?
Yeah,
like,
do you have credible evidence?
Yeah, like it would be for me like, oh, and then I wouldn't ask about it. I wouldn't question the woman who like. I mean, I know that I'm taking kind of a modernist perspective on this, but it still seems weird for Jon, of all people, who's always been at best kind of awkward around girls.
Yeah.
To just straight up be like, who told you couldn't have children? I'll bet that's bullshit, because I know all about it. Like,
yeah, that's really more of a modern Sam move, if anything.
Yeah, well, and
let's mansplain fertility.
Well, and it just so clearly paves the way for her to say, the witch who killed my husband.
Yeah.
What really is Dany going to say something like that? Like, she's not. It was funny, but it was just such a cheap joke where she could be like, she tossed that off like it wasn't one of her defining character tragedies. That what happened with Mary Mazdur and Khal Drogo in the tent, that she doesn't fully understand, that she signed over the life of her unborn child to save her husband, and then took that to mean that she could have no more children, because guess what? She's had a lot of sex since then, and she hasn't gotten pregnant. Right. And so
but that could all be Dario and the effects of blue hair dye on beards.
Or just riding a horse all the time, because I hear that affects it.
So...
I don't think that, guys. But yeah, I don't know. Do you see what I mean? Like how it was just kind of... I enjoyed the humor in this, and I enjoyed the obvious, like, wink, wink. Oh, I guess she can maybe have children because Mary Mazdur...
Because a man said so.
Yeah, I don't... It just... It seems
because Jon Snow with his Maester's chain in gynecology says maybe the shepherd witch is not the expert that you think she is.
Well, the shepherd witch with a big old axe to grind.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and it's just never come up. But so Mary Mazdur she was in the books connected to Maester Marwyn.
Right.
What if Mary Mazdur is Maester translated or poorly pronounced by the Lamb people.
Oh, and you think that maybe she just got full Maester training?
Yeah, or partial Maester training.
Well,
and that's where Mazdur comes from.
Well, that would be really interesting, because it says in the... And this is in the books. We're probably primarily talking about book stuff now. But the fact that the witch's name was even dropped, so maybe she'll become relevant at some point later in the season. That would be kind of a cool comeback. But or a cool callback. But in the book specifically, it says that Marwyn taught her the common tongue and a lot of what she knows about anatomy. So it makes sense that she obviously did undergo a degree of Maester training. I wonder if he formalized it in some capacity.
Yeah.
Or if she just kind of styled herself that way.
She took it on and her neighbors couldn't say Maester.
Oh. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Just
I like that.
Neat little side point that I've been thinking on.
Well, I mean, if Hodor is hold the door, I think it's completely reasonable.
Or maybe it's Mazdor.
Mask the door?
Mask the door. There's light getting out.
So, and then at that point, they discuss the pregnancy and there's raised eyebrows all around and ooh, but then Tyrion returns and so does Cersei. And Cersei, man, they should have known from the beginning that this was bullshit, because Cersei offers to go above and beyond. Not only will she pull her armies back, she will help. And Tyrion totally buys it because she has a bun in the oven. And he has said to her, remember, he's even said to her, you love your children. It's one of your few redeeming factors. Mm-hmm. God, she's totally manipulated him into believing that she would actually go above and beyond to help, which she's...
Yeah.
And
I bought it.
I did for a minute.
I bought it until we opened back in the map room.
Yeah, until 5 minutes later. Oh, but yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
The minute we were back there, I realized, oh, no, I'm dumb.
Well, and what's even interesting is this was, a particularly well-written episode, I have to say again, just because she even drops a clue that that's exactly what she's doing earlier in the scene when she asks Jon initially to stand down and sit it out and to leave his armies down. And Dany kind of sniffed and is like, you're not going to ask me? And Cersei says to her, if you said yes to that, I would trust you even less than I do now. Of course I wouldn't ask you. And that's exactly essentially what they've asked of Cersei. And she says that she'll go above and beyond. So by Cersei's own logic, they shouldn't trust her.
Right.
And they do. Like, you can even see Dany's... I feel like this is Dany showing her age a little bit, and maybe Jon showing his age a little bit, because they are both still pretty young. And Dany's kind of a bit like Robb in her sort of winning streak that's been going on. Mm-hmm. And to see her sort of, like, jaw open and just in awe, she totally bought it, too. Yeah. Maybe because she's distracted, because she's got a crush on a guy.
Yeah, maybe she was all Twitter-pated and... or maybe because she has had somebody betray her in that manner, though. I am forgetting the name of was it Pentos? No, it wasn't. What's his face with the bolts? Oh,
with the gold?
Yeah.
Zalab.
Yeah. No.
Jalabar Joe. Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, all the X's, guys. We're sorry. No, I don't think it's Jalabar. So it was the wealthy guy that she locks in the vault.
She locks in the vault
with Doria. Yep. I know her name. Maybe it is Jalabar.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Oh God! If you guys want to write us some angry letters, you can. We deserve it.
Yep.
So Cersei says she'll come help. Everyone's happy, and then we skip to Winterfell, but we're not going to do that. But there is a time elapse there where we return to King's Landing and we open in the map room, and Jaime is just so excited.
Yeah. Like, oh, yay! I get to fight people who deserve to die for once because they're already dead.
We're in the right place. I've got a baby on the way. Like Jaime had a good 35 minutes. I feel like of just pure unadulterated yes.
Like this would have been the if Game of Thrones was a musical. This would have been Everything's Coming Up Jaime.
Oh, or something, but like maybe something a little even more. I don't know. I feel like it should be more like Sondheim. Something from Sunday in the Park with George. And then, because his song on the way out is 100% Send in the Clowns. Like, oh, now I want to do that. There might be a video surprise.
Send in the Crowns.
For future.
Yeah, name of the episode.
So then Jamie's all excited, planning everything. Cersei comes in, and she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Didn't you get the memo? I talked about it with Urani.
Like, yeah. And he's like, what do you mean I'm sending the troops north? And she was like, we're not fucking doing that.
No.
And then she calls him stupid, reveals that she's been betraying him and conspiring behind his back this entire time. And then when he's like, cool, I'm out, she's like, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
What?
Ooh.
Yeah, she basically goes down the line and says that she hasn't let him in on any of their current strategy because she has always thought that he was the stupidest Lannister. Not really because of that, but she was like, of course I wasn't going to tell you. I can't trust you. She essentially says that he conspired with her, conspired against her with Tyrion. And he's like, I met with him. He's our brother. This is totally, and he's fully now in the camp. He's fully now in Jon's camp, at the very least in the sense that his priority is now ultimately the saving of this continent. Like, yeah, Jaime is there. That is where Jaime has seen it. Jaime is convinced. Jaime knows Jaime has too much raw strategic knowledge not to ignore the fact that there are 100,000 of these things. And they're still going to have to deal with those armies. They're still going to have to deal with Dany's armies. Like, I think Jaime just reached the end of his tether right there.
Yeah. We talked about the scene at length, and we loved it.
Well, I want to ask you this question because it is probably because we're about to sort of put to bed this whole King's Landing arc, which in turn will be Cersei's. I watched this scene again, and when Cersei says they're killed by fire, when Cersei's sort of going over her practical reasons for not sending her army north, I found myself actually pretty convinced because what she says is, you kill them with fire, they have 2 dragons. And they have Dothraki, and they have Unsullied, and they have the armies of the north. If they can't defeat them, what are we going to do? And she does, and she's like, and I'm supposed to leave everything unprotected. And even if she's just worried about Dany, she would be leaving the entire continent, by and large, unprotected for any other enemies, which she might not care about the people on the continent, but she doesn't want to lose the continent.
Right.
And then also it harkens back to the earlier part of the episode where she basically has no reason to believe this isn't a trap, and practically she kind of can't afford to not believe it's a trap. So my question to this episode, I don't know that Cersei made any mistakes. No.
I think that I don't think that her lying was a victory.
No.
I don't think that was strategically sound.
No, but also if you think about it too, it really is. If you think about the fact that Jon announced his and Dany's political alliance with so little fanfare and as a surprise, that would absolutely 100% make Cersei feel like she was being ganged up on, and make Cersei feel like this was not the armistice that she thought it was, that these were 2 enemies who joined forces and were absolutely trying to manipulate her because it was a lie, because because this is something that you would have told her. That's why it was such a huge mistake for Jon to blurt it out right then. Yeah. Or not a mistake, but that's why it was a huge problem, because this is knowledge, this is intelligence that could have affected her acceptance of this meeting. And had Jon and Dany been united, she probably wouldn't have accepted it, because it would have meant she would have been completely out. I mean,
right, kind of she would have been outnumbered.
Yeah, exactly, which makes no sense in a negotiation. So I look at this and she's kind of the MVP. Granted, the way she's lived her life up until now is, made her final, sophistication and this sort of thing kind of useless and ultimately destructive. But I felt like she was pretty rational and well-reasoned. Maybe she is pregnant and this is just her off alcohol.
This is just the first time we've ever seen sober Cersei.
Maybe. Or, the first time since, season 2. First time since the Blackwater. She's just kept that. She's just trying to outrun that hangover. That Blackwater hangover.
There's an episode we didn't get to see. Which is Cersei with the shakes.
That's the thing, too. Another part of me is like, this woman did not just stop drinking alcohol and has had 0 withdrawal symptoms. Yeah. Come on now. And no morning sick. She's pregnant and she's going through withdrawal. There
is not enough vitamin B in the 7 Kingdoms.
These people haven't even invented IVs yet. Please. Get out of here. Get out of here. She doesn't even have any bags under her eyes. Whatever. This isn't real.
This isn't real. We've finally... Suspension of disbelief only goes so far.
I really did. I loved we talked about this a little bit, but as Jamie's like, I'm done finally, and Cersei just sort of sadly stares after him, and then the snow falls on King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched that. That's become like one of my now. I kind of glossed over it in the beginning when I first watched it, but it's so pretty. Yeah. Upon rewatch, it's just lovely.
There was so much to unpack during those moments that you didn't really get to think about that moment on its own.
This episode does really, I think, warrant a rewatch. If you haven't done it yet.
Absolutely.
Like, I view this thing, if you really like this show, it's exciting the first time you watch it. And I know I miss details. I miss significant details sometimes. And I actually write about this show. So, it's definitely like, if you were kind of craving a rewatch, just go ahead and do it. You're going to pick up on a lot of different stuff, particularly this week. And the ending's still pretty dope, so.
Yeah.
So you just kind of think that Cersei's lying is so, like, you're still not spectacularly impressed with this, or?
I don't think that that her going above and beyond in her lie it does anything. It is a long-term victory.
Yeah. I think
it's because in a week and a half they're going to notice that there's nobody wearing red coming up the King's Road, and they're going to realize that they were misled. Whereas if she had just said,
you mean it's a short-term victory?
Yeah, it's a short-term victory in that it gets them to go north and to maybe not leave quite so many people behind. But if she had just said, yes, I'll hold back, and used that moment to strengthen her position while holding back, she would have been in a better place once the war north of the Wall, or slightly south of the Wall, or very far south of the Wall, comes to its conclusion.
Yeah, it's interesting in that capacity. I think you're right. It
was a mustache twirling victory.
Yeah. I wonder, it was also kind of the moment, I feel like, if ever there were a moment for Cersei to sort of like have a reality check, it was this.
It would have been here.
And it didn't happen. And I think, we talked about this a lot, our first episode. This was Cersei declaring once and for all who she is and what her priorities are. She's not pretending anymore to be any kind of beneficent queen like Marjorie. Because, if you remember when Marjorie was going around, like, that's how she showed up Cersei, because she was, like, kind and sweet and good, and that really bothered Cersei, that people liked Marjorie for that reason, because I bet Cersei's also one of those girls that is really sad and mean and angry.
She's mean because no one likes her, and no one likes her because she's mean. Exactly.
And I feel like that was one of the reasons that it was so amusing to me that was always one of the reasons she hated Marjorie so much, was because Marjorie was just effortlessly loved. Mm-hmm. And Cersei also knew it was a bit fake, so it's always amused me that was sort of a sticking point. And now Cersei's like, you know what? I don't even need to be nice. This is fine. I am not even wasting my time on this anymore. I don't have any kids. I don't have a husband. I am fully in power. And this is what you guys get. Take me out. I have solidified my position significantly. And I think now I'm actually kind of interested to see what happens to her next season. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what else is there.
So I've been saying until about episode 4 or maybe 5 of this season that we were going to see the end of Cersei before the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, I think all of us said that.
And when we weren't spending much time in King's Landing, I kind of pulled back from that a little bit.
Yeah.
But now, even though I loved everything Cersei, I don't know where they go from here.
There's no one else for her to have scenes with.
Yeah. Well, there's Qyburn.
Yeah.
There's Ronnie.
Yeah, but I guess...
Is she going to ride north
I guess
with her Golden Company?
Yeah, if the only thing that needs to happen is Cersei... Maybe it will just be Cersei being more aggressive and Dany and Jon regrettably fighting a war on 2 fronts. Maybe that's next season.
Maybe Cersei will decide that she's a military genius.
Oh my gosh, I'm really excited for that.
She'll have the Tywin tent on the front line.
I want her in some kind of breastplate.
Yeah. In her maternity breastplate.
Standing orders. Yep. Yeah, I guess I'm actually interested in Cersei's journey for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah.
Because now I don't have to worry. Now I'm not concerned. Okay, for a while her journey was just one of tragic non-redemption. Because, at least in the show, Cersei does inspire a degree of sympathy. As they work so hard to paint a lot of these characters as gray as opposed to black and white. I think Cersei is definitely more on the black side of things, but she's definitely gray to a strong degree because we see the very real pain she suffered at the hands of others, and we also see the pain she's caused. But still, so for a while I was just like, shit, I'm just gonna have to watch this person become inevitably evil and then die. Like, to lose all of her grace, all of her humanity, whatever goodness was left in her. I'm gonna have to watch her fight those instincts and then lose that battle, and then she's gonna die, and it's gonna be shitty. Because she'll die when she's irredeemable. And then she became irredeemable, but she's not dead. And she's also now just completely emptied her purse of fucks and is making some pretty shrewd decisions.
Yeah.
Is not the maniac that we see in A Feast for Crows. That's like checking to see if dwarfs are the right dwarf after they're beheaded. So it's, for the first time, I'm kind of interested to see what she'll do, because I think they've done the right thing, which is avoid making Ronnie Greyjoy the big bad villain of the last 2 seasons, and they're keeping it her.
Yeah. I will also say that we only saw Cersei being static for 6 episodes.
What do you mean?
Because, I mean, end of season 5, we had the Walk of Shame. And was that even season 6? That might have been, I think it was end of season 5. And then Tommen only died the last episode of season 6.
Okay. So you're saying that's just this season that she's been...
This season is the only time that she hasn't been... As opposed to where we saw Dany in the same position for about 3 years.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're right. I wonder if she finally just got some relaxing time and some time to journal, and she was like, you know what?
Yeah. She
finally let it all settle. Maybe she did just process everything in like an hour when it came to her children, and she was like, you know what? Oh, this is my superpower. I'm good at processing grief. Let's get to work.
Let's get me some black turtlenecks and we'll go.
Was not as in love with the Lannister Winter Collection as I was with the Targaryen Winter Collection.
Without the apple, it's nothing.
Well, I mean, I just don't know why she's wearing that weird cap sleeve overdress. It
Yeah.
just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Cersei needs to go with the militaristic look.
Yeah, and I miss her hair. I'm not in love with Cersei's whole look right now. I think it's appropriate, but I like her long bitchy hair. And I think that wraps up.
I think that wraps up King's Landing. So, anything interesting happen in Winterfell?
Depends on your definition of interesting.
So we had the Sansa Littlefinger scene that we talked about a little bit in our earlier episode, and I really, as I mentioned, I really liked the scene. I would have liked to have seen it not this episode because it felt a little too on the nose.
You mean the trial?
No, the Sansa Littlefinger, the question game, the what are my enemies? What's the worst thing my enemy could be thinking? I would have liked to have seen that earlier.
And how does their strategy...
And then hearkened back to it.
I agree. Because it really was a phenomenal scene.
It was great.
It was complex. It was interesting. There were a couple of different layers to it. The dialogue was vintage Littlefinger. Vintage. This was a great last episode for him. If nothing else, it was great for Aidan Gillen. And it was also vintage Sansa sort of being mesmerized by a snake a little bit and being manipulated, though we later find out that, of course, she's not, though we don't know when that happens. But actually, Littlefinger kind of convinces me that Arya is out to get Sansa in this episode, so it really was kind of a masterclass in how to manipulate someone.
I think that Winterfell was great. Even we're going to nitpick on it because this was an episode that was good enough that we can be nitpicky as opposed to just whining about things we didn't like.
Well, yeah, it's weird. There was very little of this episode that I didn't like on its own. It's just in the context of the rest of the season.
It's just how they got there we didn't love.
Well, yeah, and it just... Well, I will get to it later, but that spells big problems for me in season 8. But so then we have a nice shot of Sansa on the battlements where she's clearly like sort of screwing her courage to the sticking place. And then we head to the Great Hall of Winterfell after Sansa tells a guard to have her sister brought to the Great Hall.
Yeah.
She's there. It makes it Sansa... Arya asks her if she's sure she wants to do this. Sansa says yes, and she says, you stand accused of blah, blah, blah charges, murder, treason, blah, blah, blah. And she says, how do you plead? Peter Baelish. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. And it's Perry Mason.
Yeah.
So...
Now, there's this... Do you want to talk about the scene we didn't get?
Well, let's finish going through this. So Sansa, like, there's this brilliant moment where Sansa where Sophie Turner turns to Littlefinger, and we get a moment of pure shock and confusion on his face, which happens so rarely on this show. Which has
happened once before with Bran.
And it made me, yes. And once with Ned.
Yep.
And so, well, probably a couple of times with Ned. Ned was eternally surprised by a lot of things in King's Landing. But... Yeah, it was just this beautiful... We never get stuff like that with Littlefinger. He's always been one step ahead. So it was this sort of hilarious moment of... And the minute, of course, she said Lord Baelish, you were like, oh, Littlefinger's going to die in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Whoa, this is a big deal. And then she goes through all the charges. She nails him against the wall. He starts begging for his life, and Arya slits his throat.
Yep.
And it was it's pretty good.
It was pretty good. So there's a scene that they've discussed after the fact that we didn't get, which was Sansa going to Bran.
Yeah, because Sansa is very confused by her sister's actions, as we all were, and says and goes and eventually apparently goes to Bran and knocks on his door and is like, "What the? Can you believe what's going on?" And Littlefinger and this, and Bran is essentially like, "Oh yeah, don't trust that guy."
Yeah.
Like seriously, don't. He's an asshole.
Mm-hmm. Here, I've made notes.
Yeah, and so...
He looked so beautiful as he was pushing our aunt out the moon door.
It was so... Well, I mean, didn't Sansa see that? Like, Sansa knew that. Yeah, I think that he probably gave her the context for it, or she finally just had the courage to come up and say it.
Yeah.
But it was the idea of Bran being, like, going all gray-eyed and then just telling Sansa what's happening as he's saying it.
Well, actually...
Going, okay, hang on. I'm in the throne room, and then, okay, there's Dad... And they're arresting him for... Oh my... Littlefinger totally put a knife to his throat. What the...
It's this knife.
Get off my dad! And
yeah.
Sansa's got to shake him out of it or something. I don't know. But yeah, so it's a big twist, and we missed that... I can't decide... We talked about this at the beginning of the episode. I would have rather had a more complete narrative and something that felt less
than have a what a twist.
Yeah, to have a what a twist. More like it just doesn't because even so, like Arya's behavior this season, it doesn't make sense to me that it would manifest this way. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to me that Sansa would believe that her sister Arya would say something like, "I could be Lady of Winterfell. I could want that." Like Arya was never grasping. She was never jealous of Sansa. She was angry, or she was. She didn't. It didn't present in a "give me what you have" kind of way. It presented in like "fuck you, I'm going to do the exact opposite" kind of way.
Right.
So it didn't make sense that Arya would go after Sansa with that pretense, and nor does it make sense that Sansa would believe that pretense if she's become so damn political the past couple of years. Like,
right. Arya wanted to be Brienne.
Yeah.
So I'm going to preface this with I liked how the scene played out.
Ooh, me too.
But there were a couple of moments that I think would have been a little more given a little more oomph. Okay. Specifically, Littlefinger's last moments. Number one, when he says, "Don't I have a chance to defend myself?" Mm-hmm. Arya could have just tossed down Needle.
Exactly, like. He didn't ask for a trial by combat.
Yeah.
And
it could have been, this is based on my years of experience writing episodic television for HBO, mm-hmm. That that it could have been yes, you can defend yourself because you asked for trial, and by doing so, you asked for trial by combat, and it would have been a very cathartic end to Littlefinger, who always had someone to fight his battles for him.
True.
And
as you're saying that, visualizing it, it's painfully awkward visualizing Littlefinger try to sob fight his way out of this.
Yeah.
I
would have been totally okay with that. And then the other thing would have been potentially Sansa being Lady of Winterfell, not allowing herself to have an executioner.
That was the thing. When they quote their dad right after that, were you guys behind the barn door when he says, did you not finish that? Where she says, you passed the sentence, so you should have swung the sword, Sansa?
Yeah.
And I unless they were trying to sort of make it seem like the Starks are one now, the Starks are this unified, that she's my arm, that she's my axe. I could kind of see that, but it does fly completely in the face of one of the first and one of the first laid down rules of this universe that the Starks.
Literally the opening scene of the first scene post opening credits of the show. Yeah,
that was a little. I have to say, when it comes to his sort of begging for his life, it struck me as pathetic and quick. I kind of agree with you. It was sort of I think they couldn't give enough time to this thing. Otherwise, they might have offered him, there might have been more back and forth with him, getting a trial by combat or asking to take the black or something like that. But I think they wanted to end Littlefinger decisively because he's such a piece of shit and he survived way too long. And then it also made a little, I didn't like to see him cry because it just was, I don't know, it was just distasteful and very pathetic.
He was begging. I'm okay with him being humiliated and begging.
Well, yeah, and
I wanted to see him more humiliated.
No, yeah, it just seems like it went from him kind of tap dancing a little bit to immediately knowing he's screwed and then starting to cry. And at first I was like, really, dude, you didn't have an escape route. You didn't have an escape plan. You didn't have a burn, you didn't have a burn bag where but I don't even know what I'm trying to say. You didn't have a go bag. You didn't have a go bag for just such an occasion. That to me didn't really match up with who Littlefinger is. I don't agree. Well, hang on. Let me. So that was why, when he just kind of started crying, I was like, this is kind of apropos if you're this sort of very cowardly, has never been good at honest, face-to-face confrontation. When faced with the fact that you simply have to defend yourself on your merits, you don't really have any merits except for being a spineless shit stirrer. So. Yeah, it's weird. I started being uncomfortable about this. Not that I care if a man cries on television. It's really not a big deal. That's not what I'm trying to say. But just the fact that it seemed like a rather pathetic end to somebody who was such a Machiavellian character, but that it also seemed a little appropriate at the same time. That he really hasn't had anything. He really hasn't had any substance.
The reason I'm not especially surprised that he didn't have how am I getting out of this situation was because this is the situation that he thought he had completely under control, specifically Sansa.
Yeah.
The one thing he couldn't, Sansa turning on him would have been his fault. And I don't think he could have foreseen himself losing that.
True.
He could have seen Arya working against him. He could have seen even the Knights of the Vale working against him. But Sansa, he thought he had wrapped around his finger. And so he was blinded by whatever his belief in love is.
Well, yeah, and I think this was probably the closest he'd ever been to the goal of, marrying someone who looks like Catelyn Tully.
Yeah.
Or marrying Catelyn Tully. I think this was the first time he got close to the success of that, and I think that would blind anybody who's been on a 30-year mission to marry a certain redhead.
Uh-huh.
So, I remember hearing a podcast, I think it was Cast of Thrones from Geekly. I think they were the minute Sansa was able to manipulate him last season in Winds of Winter, when she moves to kiss him and then walks away when they're in the weirwood.
Mm-hmm.
somebody was like, "Oh, so he's totally toast now, right?" And they were like, "Yeah, yeah," which was true. Like that moment, and it kind of just you saying that harkened me back to it. The minute that he let her manipulate him, that's when Littlefinger got his first blind spot, I think.
Right.
And I think it was kind of appropriate because now we're seeing. I like that because as good as Littlefinger is, now what we're meant to believe is that Sansa is better.
Right.
And I like that Arya went off and got a superpower, and so did Sansa.
Yep, and her superpower is the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, and what's awesome was that we rewatched it yesterday, and I noticed that this time Arya was staring in awe at Sansa as Sansa just slayed all day at this trial. Just was phenomenal. Like, it was like an episode of a David E. Kelly show. Just great. And Arya, a couple of episodes ago got to show off, like, what she could do with Brienne, and now they've both, like, see what each other can do.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, yeah. As was their scene after that. I enjoyed that.
As with their scene after that, which we talked about as one of our favorites.
You're still very strange and annoying.
Yeah. It felt... It felt very season 1.
It felt very symbolic.
Like it grew up. Like season 1 grown up.
It really did. It felt like that was a weighty scene. Not much, just them. We're talking about the scene between Arya and Sansa on the battlements, in which they sort of rehash what's just happened. And Sansa says, well, I think in his own way he did love me. And Arya says, I never would have survived, but you would have survived. And Sansa says, you're the strongest person I know. And they're like, ah. But then they quote their father, and the camera pans up, and you get this lovely shot of Arya and Sansa, and their differences are really highlighted. What they're wearing, the way they look, their heights, what they're looking at, their own personal thoughts, and yet they're united. Mm-hmm. And it was just this kind of beautifully... It was a really artistic shot, just the framing of that, and the panning out to winter was almost like it was the end of a dance, or like a tableau or something. It was really pretty.
Yeah. So, we love that. All of that. Anything we want to say about Sam and Bran that we didn't before? I felt like we dived pretty deep into that bit.
I will say this was like this was really the only humor I felt this week that wasn't forced at all. That wasn't written with it in mind. That wasn't written with like elbow laughs in mind or something like that. Or like a nudge in mind, I guess. And that's partly due to John Bradley's just phenomenal comedic timing, and both him and Isaac Hempstead Wright's oddly great chemistry.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that... Oh, somebody pointed something out to me. Everybody's been pissed off, that, myself included, that Sam would have ignored Gilly when she first dropped that big bomb, and then would proceed to go to Winterfell and blatantly and nakedly take credit for that discovery. Somebody suggested on the internet, I forget where, that Sam had already transcribed that portion of the diary, which is why Gilly was reading it to begin with. And so he wasn't listening to her, but he already knew about Rhaegar.
He wasn't listening, but it didn't sync because he'd
already read it.
Yeah.
Though, wait, no, he couldn't have, because if he'd read Lyanna Stark, then he would have known.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe he wouldn't know, but, like... Yeah, okay, never mind. I'm back to not liking that, because it doesn't make any sense. Because if Sam had read that Lyanna Stark had married Rhaegar Targaryen in a secret ceremony, his ears would have pricked. Like, that's a discovery we should have fucking seen.
Yeah.
But instead, we got Gilly doing it, and then we got Sam doing this asshole. Like, this just didn't make sense to me then. Because the flow of... Anyway. But how did you feel about the fact that they showed a montage of a less than impressive-looking Rhaegar Targaryen marrying Lyanna Stark over...
Well, it's nice that they were able to save money by using Viserys' wig.
Okay, right, and mostly his face. I mean, I get that they're brothers for sure, but I was like, Rhaegar was supposed to be almost the prince that was promised. Like, you get the idea that Rhaegar was just this paragon of good looks, and like he sings, but he's a great sword fighter, and he's supposed to be kind of Superman, and this guy was not.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was... Yeah, he was Viserys' older brother who looks the same but wears glasses and is like reading about being an arborist.
Uh-huh. I didn't have huge issues with that, with the exception that I thought a little bit. I thought he could have been a little bit more hero-y.
Just a little bit more impressive.
Yeah.
And I say that on all levels. I didn't feel like the actor has a hugely dynamic presence, which somebody like Rhaegar, who is such a celebrity, kind of you feel like should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, and I say impressive too, like, not really in his clothes. His hair isn't that done, I suppose. He doesn't seem to have all the trappings of the Prince of the Land, the Prince of the Seven Kingdoms, the heir to the throne, which maybe is part of his characterization. But this is like, if this guy has barely any lines, and this is the first time we're seeing him on screen, and you're trying to make him live up to the characterization he's had on the show, they needed to do, I feel like, a little bit more work to call that out and make it a little bit more obvious, especially since they didn't really give him anything to do besides get married to Lyanna Stark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But for me, it was more, did we really have to find out the genealogy during the sex scene?
No, that was like weird timing.
It was great. But, I mean, they're leading to the fact that it's gonna be a thing.
I, for one, felt really validated when, like, I kept watching last season when people were like, oh my god, his name's Jaehaerys, like, if you read her lips, that's totally what she says, and it means this, because Jaehaerys, it's like the Valyrian version of Jon, which I remember reading that, and I was like, no, it's not. It's not, no. No, that's not how, it's not actual history, no one said that, they didn't Westerosi-ize Valyrian names.
Yeah.
They weren't, like, no. That's not like Juan and Jon. Absolutely not. But then also just to have her be like, no, it's Aegon Targaryen, you idiots.
Which pretty much crushes. We're obviously, which I mean, it's pretty established, not going to see Fagon from the books. But I do wonder what we're going to find, if we're going to find out if it's going to be a different name in the books.
I would wonder that. Jaehaerys seems really weird to me.
There was a Jaehaerys, though.
No, I know there was a Jaehaerys, but it's a very random name for Rhaegar to pick to name his kid after.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense. Like, and this is my fairly limited knowledge of, quote, Westeros history, but from what I read in The World of Ice and Fire, and I got pretty far into the Targaryens, there are impressive Jaehaerys, but nothing that would be nothing like that would make sense nothing they did would make sense for Jon to be named after him if Jon is a character of such prominence. It makes way more sense for him to name him Aegon.
Uh-huh.
But didn't he already have a son named Aegon though in the show? Didn't we establish that? That one of his sons by Elia was.
Yeah, and that's why. Where does that fit?
Oh well.
Like would that name fit in the books?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm apparently like to hear myself talk. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it would fit in the books. I wonder what his name's going to be. Maybe it'll be something Stark. Maybe it is just legit Jon Targaryen.
Yep.
J-Targ.
I
love how they had the argument about how Bran was like, oh, his name's Jon Sand. And Sam's like, no, it's not.
No,
and Bran's
it's not.
like, Bran's like, no. Bastards from Dorne are named Sand.
Yes, but
clarification to me.
Well, actually,
Sam has met the only person that's smarter than him.
Yeah.
Or not smarter, but has more information.
Yep.
They're going to have such fun scenes next year.
I know.
Or 2 years from now. Fuck. That's going to be blast. I really hope that we're going to get like Buffy the Vampire Slayer Scooby library scenes between those two. That would be great. Please, if we can find a way to get Anthony Head to like
Gilly Xander
be a maester and kill Maester Wolkin, and then it's just Maester Giles. Oh, and Gilly is Xander. Gilly is Xander. She's the heart of the group.
Yeah. Speaking of the heart of the group,
okay,
Tormund.
We should go over boat sex real quick.
Oh yeah, there is boat. But okay. Speaking of the wang of the group, John and Danny got down and dirty.
Yeah, and it was like a little bit. It was one of two moments that I got on the hype train for, and then it kind of pulled into a little bit of disappointment station. I thought we were going to get something a little bit more than just like hi, and then like boom naked.
Mm-hmm.
But still cool, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. I didn't care either way, honestly.
you're always Switzerland whenever they're shipping stuff to talk about. But I think one thing I would keep seeing coming up on the internet, and I don't know if you feel the same way, that everybody's joking, like, why the hell is Tyrion creeping outside their bedroom door? This is super weird. Is he in love with Dany? Is he jealous? And I kind of poo-pooed all of those while it seemed like people were just making jokes about him being creepy. But now that people are theorizing that he's in love with her in some capacity, I feel like I need to put my foot down and say that he's obviously just really worried about the lack of objectivity that both of these people are going to deal with in the following season. And the fact that Jon, partially due to his romance with Dany, torpedoed a negotiation today.
Yeah.
Torpedoed it because he's in love with her and, like, could not, like, wanted to profess it. Yeah, he was doing it because honor demanded it, but Tyrion is right to be concerned about this.
And as important as the North of the Wall mission was, they lost a dragon and could have potentially lost a queen because she staged the rescue. Exactly.
And now, how are Jon and Dany ever going to be able to... I'm reminded of a classic Star Trek The Next Generation episode called Lessons, which featured Picard falling in love with Nella Darren, a stellar cartographer. It's the first time he actually has a relationship on the ship, and it's like it's really a great episode because it's the one time that Picard has a romance that's anything approaching normal.
Yeah.
Like, they have shit in common. They go on dates. He sees her at a concert. They make out in a Jeffrey's tube. It's really sweet. But then she goes down on this planet, and there's some sort of storm and a transporter accident, and they think that they try to beam everybody up before the storm hits, but they can't do it, and so she gets stuck down there, and Picard thinks that she's dead, but turns out that she's alive. But he realizes that he's like, I can't have you on the ship anymore because it would only compromise my objectivity. Like, I can't put you in danger ever again. I physically cannot do it. And so she leaves. And it really feels like this is going to work. I wonder if this isn't going to be mostly Tyrion's storyline next season, where where he will betray Dany and Jon at some point when he sees them so indulgent in their love that they make a blindly bad decision. Because I feel like everything else for him is resolved.
Right. The only other thing that might have happened is it's possible Jorah gave him $5.
Ew, Johnny.
Hey, let me know what happened, because I just got to know.
No. Ugh.
Not to be a voyeur, just to give him the notes.
No, stop it. I'm not. Ugh. It's just got weird. I don't know. How do, like,
I broke my co-host.
Yeah, why don't you finish this one?
Okay, so, well, we should probably go back to Eastwatch and talk about what happened there. We did talk about it in the hot take episode. But, so, yes, we have established that the White Walkers do in fact have a dragon. And that dragon can in fact fly with holes in its wings, and can in fact still breathe fire.
Or something.
It's
magical fire. It's magical ice fire that breaks the wall.
Yep, and the wall came tumbling down.
Which kind of makes sense to me, I feel like. And the wall did come tumbling down. We don't know if Tormund and Beric are alive, but Tormund and Beric are alive. Everyone calm down. Or else it's... Actually, I shouldn't say that. I keep saying shit like that because based on my internal, like, head telegraph of what makes for, like, a decent character ending and a decent narrative arc, that's what I'm basing most of my predictions on, and the show, I forget sometimes, just really doesn't care about that kind of stuff, or it doesn't have the same ideas of it that I do, so I keep making these predictions, and they keep being wrong, because I don't expect silly plot developments. It sounded really
Barry
D. I don't think that Barry D and Tormund, I don't think we've seen the last
No, I mean Barry S. Barris and Selmy.
Oh, yes, Pop. That is a prime example.
So we don't know, but we hope against hope that it will at least be a little bit more weighty. Not that the wall coming... Here's the thing. If they died here, it had less weight because they didn't die trying to save the wall.
Yeah, if they died here, they died in an avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. Yeah, I'm still
very
very
much,
avalanche,
but an avalanche.
I'm very much convinced that they're still alive. But if the show decides to get really terrible next season, then maybe they won't be. So, as also too, after all of Beric, like I can't get what Kroner said out of my head from like 2 weeks ago. Like he doesn't see what redeeming quality Beric Dondarrion has, and I'm kind of with him.
Yeah.
On this sense of like, why are you getting, you of all people, dude? Why are you getting all this screen time? Why? This is where I feel like, maybe just for comic relief, this is where I feel like they could have brought back Lady Stoneheart. I feel like if they had brought her back like last season. And she was the one who was, like, leading the charge up to the wall because she had been brought back and she felt like she needed to do something like that. Mm-hmm. And then it's her on this thing with Jon. That would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not under any illusions that it would have happened. But yeah, it is a little bit strange that that Beric is all of a sudden getting a weighty destiny when I feel like there are other characters that would be way more served by that. Mm-hmm. And Thoros was way more entertaining.
I think that, yes. I think that by bringing Beric back and not just having him be this is how Melisandre learned that this was possible. Uh-huh. They gave him more meaning than he had.
Yeah. I don't know.
So that's my thoughts on that.
It is still pretty. As this scene goes, I kind of want to. I'm curious because what I found momentous about this episode was just the scene work between the actors. I loved Tyrion and Cersei. I loved seeing Dany walk in and hold Cersei's gaze. I loved those moments, and I loved every inch of Sansa sort of becoming this fully actualized ruler. And everything that went with that. The wall coming down should have been one of the most momentous moments on this series. Mm-hmm. It has been we've been telegraphing this since day one. I've said this a million times, the first shot that got me interested in the show was the first shot that anybody saw of any Game of Thrones footage anywhere was a shot of this wall. And it felt to me like it was sort of like, oh, they blew a hole in it. And we could barely even see it. Like, we didn't even get we didn't get a wide shot of the wall that I felt was even, like, that was lit well enough that you could see what really had happened. So it felt kind of, and I'm shocked to say it, kind of underwhelming to me and a little bit predictable.
I'm going to say that I think that part of that was because of the fact that we, and probably a lot of our listeners, have been predicting it, and so if you're someone who was just watching the show every week and wasn't seeking out podcasts or recording podcasts or reading the subreddits and things like that,
right?
I think it would have been more momentous. I don't know that they could have made the wall fall in a way that lived up to what we expected.
I think that's fair. I think, yeah, because part of me too, it definitely one of my sticking points was that I'm like, wait, so just a part of it is going to come down? Like they just blew a hole in it? Mm-hmm. I was expecting the entire thing to come down. But then practically, I think on the other side of that, I might have complained like, that's an awfully big wall for it to all come down at once. But in that case, I feel like they would have used magic, and here they almost
and they've not spoken of the Horn of Jormungand in the show.
Right, so that's, I mean, yeah, and I don't expect, I would just assume that the Night King, like, had some sort of special ice staff that touched, like, a sensitive portion of the wall and, like, just made cracks go through it or something like that. That would be, mm-hmm. Or, like, managed to harness some kind of electricity through his ice javelin. I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if any of this is possible because we haven't had really any working explanation of how the Night King works beyond the fact that they shoved dragonglass into his heart, which inexplicably made him ice. Anyway. So yeah, but I do think that I wish it had been a little bit more visually spectacular because I feel it. Did you feel like it was hard to see? Is it just maybe my TV, or I felt like it was hard to sort of pick out an actual look of the wall after the hole was blown through it, or after the big gash was blown through it? I feel like we didn't get a great establishing shot of that and what it meant.
I think that part of the problem with it being at Eastwatch is we saw the side of the wall fall down and not.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The middle
That's what
chunk.
it was. Yeah. Yeah. Well, shit, we're not going to get that moment back. They're not going to do it again.
Oh, guys, actually, so we thought about this, and we're going to do Season 7 again. So Season 8, 2021, Season 7 Redux, 2019. Yeah.
They're just going to keep doing that, and then they're going to go back to Season 1.
Yeah. Season 2. Season 1 was fine. We're going to reshoot the pilot. Reshoot the pilot based on the original pilot.
Mark Addy and Sean Bean still look like roughly the same, so
yeah.
That's fine. I think it's there was something. Yeah, I think also too this whole thing for some reason. I don't know if I'm just not scared of them so much anymore, but it really looks like someone had photoshopped the Night King on top of Viserion. He was driving it because he wasn't like really into it. He was just sort of sitting on it like he sits on his horse, so he didn't really like move with the dragon that much, and it looked like some kind of hilarious meme. Like it was the third in a series of like, where's the Night King?
Would you have rather have seen now this is pod racing?
Something, I don't know. It just for some reason struck me because he's just a glowy blue guy on a dragon, and he comes through I don't have a solution to this problem, so I hate complaining about it, but it struck me as, it amused me how much that looked like a meme. But.
Yeah.
And I do believe that closes it.
So, yay! Season 7.
Season 7.
It's not going to be 2 years till you hear from us.
No, I was actually thinking, and I'll just ask you this right now, how about we do a little Season 7 roundup sometime next week?
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'll give it a little bit more context, like, I don't want to do maybe top 10s of anything, because it'll take forever, but we're going to do a Season 7 roundup.
Season 7 roundup.
Tying up of loose ends sometime next week. We'll
have it.
You'll see.
It'll be a thing.
Yeah, we've been really tired lately, so it's
yeah.
You'll hear from us sometime next week. We might announce the exact date, but just keep an eye on your subscription boxes, probably before Wednesday. So,
all right. With that, yay, Season 7.
Yay, Season 7. Thank you guys
yay,
so
Wolf
much. This
and the
has
Dragon,
been
Dragon and the Wolf. Dragon and the Wolf.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been our most popular season of Got Thrones ever, and that is 100% thanks to you. So thank you so much to our listeners. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, folks. We'll have off-season stuff for you soon.
Very soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.